In the shadow of the Pyrenees, a renowned explorer lies dead in a cave, poisoned his priceless map to an ancient treasure stolen. Hercule Poirot, with his unrivaled little gray cells, arrives in a snowy village to unravel a web of deceit. A secretive guide, a jealous rival, and a silent porter all hide secrets, but only one hides a murderer. As clues emerge, a clean mug, a torn silk scarf, a crescent moon symbol, Poirot sets a trap to catch a killer driven by greed. Will he uncover the truth before the mountains bury it forever? Dive into the vanished map where every shadow holds a secret. Chapter 1. The Telegram. In the quiet elegance of his London flat at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot sat ensconced in an armchair, a delicate porcelain cup of steaming tisane cradled in his hands. The morning light filtered through heavy curtains, casting a soft glow on the polished mahogany table before him. His valet George had just cleared the breakfast tray, leaving Poirot to savor the aromatic blend of herbs, a ritual as precise as the symmetry of his meticulously waxed mustache. The clock on the mantel ticked toward 11, its rhythm a counterpoint to the distant hum of the city. Poirot's reverie was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. George reappeared bearing a silver salver with a single telegram. "Urgent, sir," he said, his tone betraying no curiosity, though his eyes lingered on the envelope's official seal. Poirot's small, fastidious hands took the telegram, noting the crest of the British Museum embossed in crisp black. With a silver letter opener, he slit the envelope and unfolded the message. The words were stark, penned in haste. Sir Reginald Harrow found dead in Pyrenees Cave. Priceless map missing. Request your immediate assistance. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, British Museum. Poirot's gray eyes, sharp as cut glass, gleamed with sudden intensity. He read the telegram twice, his lips pursed, the faintest twitch of his mustache betraying the quickening of his mind. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "A death, a cave, a map vanished. This is no accident, George. It is a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot does not resist a puzzle." He rose, his movements deliberate, and crossed to the fireplace where he stood for a moment, staring into the low flames. The name Sir Reginald Harrow was not unknown to him. The explorer's exploits, his quests for lost relics in the wilds of Africa and South America, had filled the pages of the Times. A man of boldness, perhaps, but also of secrets. And a map. That piqued Poirot's curiosity most of all. Maps held power. Directions to treasure, to knowledge, to motives buried deep. "George," he called, turning briskly. "My valise, s'il vous plaît. The small one with the essentials. And book me a ticket on the next train to Paris with a connection to the Pyrenees. Time. It is of the essence." George nodded, accustomed to his master's abrupt calls to action, and vanished to make arrangements. Poirot paced the room, his polished shoes silent on the thick carpet. A cave in the Pyrenees, he mused, was an unusual stage for murder, if murder it was. The telegram's brevity suggested urgency, but also concealment. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, whoever she was, had chosen her words with care. Why the British Museum? Why Poirot? The answers lay in France, in the shadow of those ancient mountains. He paused before a mirror, adjusting his tie with precision. "The little gray cells," he said softly to his reflection. "They are awake. They will find the truth no matter how deeply it is hidden." With a final sip of his tisane now cooling, he prepared to depart, his mind already mapping the contours of the mystery ahead. Chapter 2. The Mountain Village. The train from Paris wound through the foothills of the Pyrenees, its rhythmic clatter a counterpoint to the rugged beauty unfolding beyond the window. Hercule Poirot, seated in a first-class compartment, observed the landscape with a discerning eye. The jagged peaks, dusted with early autumn snow, rose like sentinels against a sky of unrelenting gray. He adjusted his overcoat, its tailored lines as impeccable as ever, and consulted his pocket watch. The journey had been long, but precision demanded patience, and Poirot was nothing if not precise. The village of Saint-Lô appeared as the train slowed, a cluster of stone houses huddled in a valley cradled by mountains. Slate roofs glistened under a recent drizzle, and chimney smoke curled upward, mingling with the mist. Poirot disembarked at the small station where a porter, bundled against the chill, took his valise with a nod. The air was sharp, scented with pine and damp earth, a stark contrast to the sooty bustle of London. Poirot's polished shoes clicked on the cobblestones as he made his way to the village's sole inn, l'Auberge des Cimes, its sign creaking in the breeze. Inside, the inn was warm, its low-beamed ceiling and crackling hearth exuding rustic charm. A woman stood waiting near the reception, her posture erect, her attire scholarly yet practical. A tweed suit, a silk scarf knotted at her throat, and spectacles perched on a sharp nose. She introduced herself as Dr. Evelyn Marsh, curator of antiquities at the British Museum. Her handshake was firm, her gray eyes assessing, as if weighing Poirot's reputation against the task at hand. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice crisp with the cadence of academia, "your presence is a relief. The matter is delicate." She gestured to a corner table away from the handful of locals nursing their midday wine. Poirot noted the tension in her shoulders, the faint crease of worry on her brow. This was a woman accustomed to control, now grappling with chaos. They sat, and Poirot ordered a tisane, declining the innkeeper's offer of coffee with a polite but firm shake of his head. "Madame," he began, his accent precise. "The telegram, it was brief. Now you will tell Poirot everything, omit nothing, for the smallest detail may be the key to the lock." Dr. Marsh nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "Sir Reginald Harrow was an explorer of some renown," she began. "His work in Mesopotamia and the Andes is well documented. 6 months ago, he approached the museum with a proposal, an expedition to a cave in these mountains, said to contain relics of an ancient Basque civilization. He believed a map, etched on parchment and rumored to date back centuries, would lead to a treasure. Not gold, mind you, but artifacts of immense cultural value. Pottery, carvings, perhaps even a lost script." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "This map, it was in his possession?" "Yes," she replied. "He showed me a photograph of it in London. A fragile thing marked with symbols no scholar has yet deciphered. He was certain it was authentic. He set out with a small team. Michel Dufour, a local guide, doctor, Lionel Vance, a rival archaeologist, and Jacques Brun, a porter hired for the expedition. They arrived in Saint-Lô 2 weeks ago. 3 days ago, Sir Reginald was found dead in the cave. The map is gone." Poirot leaned forward, his hands clasped. "And the cause of death, madame?" Dr. Marsh hesitated, her lips thinning. "The local doctor suspects poison. The body was removed to the village morgue, but the cave remains under guard. Captain Lefebvre, the gendarme, awaits your inspection." Poirot's mind raced, arranging facts like pieces on a chessboard. Poison suggested intent, not accident. The missing map pointed to greed or betrayal. These men, Dufour, Vance, Brune, what can you tell me of them? Dr. Marsh's voice grew measured. Michel Dufour is a man of the mountains born in Saint-Luce. He knows every path, every crevice. Sir Reginald hired him for his expertise, but he's a solitary figure trusted by few. Dr. Vance is a Cambridge man, brilliant but arrogant. He and Sir Reginald clashed often, their rivalry no secret in academic circles. As for Jacques Brune, he's a laborer, strong but uneducated. He was hired for his muscle. Nothing more. Poirot noted the faint disdain in her tone when speaking of Brune. You do not trust these men, madam? She met his gaze. I trust no one where that map is concerned. Its value is incalculable, not in pounds but in knowledge. Sir Reginald was reckless, waving its photograph about, boasting of its secrets. Someone saw opportunity. The innkeeper approached with Poirot's tisane, served in a chipped ceramic cup that earned a slight frown from the detective. He sipped, then set the cup down with care. And you, madam? Your role in this affair? Dr. Marsh stiffened. I funded the expedition through the museum on condition that any findings be brought to London for study. I arrived yesterday after the telegram from Captain Lefebvre. I never saw the cave nor Sir Reginald's body. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Bon, we shall visit this cave, but first I would meet the villagers. The heart of a mystery lies not only in the crime, but in those who surround it. The village of Saint-Leu was small, no more than 100 souls, its streets narrow and winding. Poirot, guided by Dr. Marsh, walked past stone cottages where women hung laundry and children peered from doorways. The air carried the scent of baking bread and wood smoke, but there was a tension, too. A wariness in the glances cast his way. News of the death had spread, and strangers, even one as impeccably dressed as Poirot, were met with suspicion. At the village square, a fountain bubbled, its water cold from mountain springs. An old man sat on its edge, carving a piece of wood with a knife. Dr. Marsh introduced him as Père Antoine, the village's unofficial historian. His eyes, clouded with age, brightened at Poirot's approach. Monsieur, Poirot said, bowing slightly, you know the tales of these mountains. This cave, what is its story? Père Antoine's hand stilled, his knife glinting in the pale sunlight. The Grotte des Ombres, he said, his voice gravelly. The Cave of Shadows. The Basques say it was a place of rituals long before the Romans came. They carved their secrets into stone, hid their treasures from invaders. Many have sought it. Few return unchanged. Poirot's mustache twitched. And this treasure? It is real? The old man shrugged. Stories, monsieur. Gold, jewels, or something older, none know. But Sir Reginald, he believed. He came to me weeks ago asking of the cave. His eyes burned with it like a man possessed. Did he speak of the map? Poirot asked. Père Antoine's gaze flickered to Dr. Marsh, then back. He mentioned a parchment, yes. Showed me a sketch of a symbol, a crescent moon sharp as a sickle, said it was the key. I warned him the mountains keep their secrets and they punish the greedy. Poirot filed this away, the crescent moon igniting a spark in his mind. And the others with him? Dufour, Vance, Brune? The old man spat into the dust. Dufour's a loner, keeps to the peaks. Vance is a city man, all talk and no respect. Brune's a brute, loyal to coin. None belong in the Grotte des Ombres. Dr. Marsh shifted impatiently, but Poirot raised a hand. One moment, madame. Père Antoine, you saw these men in the village? Oui, he replied. Vance argued with Sir Reginald at the tavern loud enough to wake the dead. Dufour skulks about, always watching. Brune keeps his head down, but his eyes, they see too much. Poirot thanked him, slipping a coin into the old man's hand. As they walked away, Doctor, Marsh murmured, superstition. The cave is a geological marvel, nothing more. Perhaps, Poirot said, his tone light but his eyes sharp. But superstition, it reveals the human heart. And the heart, it is where murder begins. They reached the inn again, where Captain Lefebvre waited, a stocky man with a weathered face and a gendarme's cap tilted at a jaunty angle. His uniform was neat, but his boots bore the mud of the mountains. Monsieur Poirot, he said, his French clipped with a local accent, the cave is ready for your inspection. But the weather turns tonight, snow perhaps. We must hurry. Poirot nodded, his mind already mapping the path ahead. The cave, the poison, the missing map. Each was a thread in a tapestry he would unravel. But first he needed to see the men who had walked with Sir Reginald into the shadows. Captain, he said, arrange for me to meet this Michel Dufour, Doctor. Vance and Jacques Brune. Separately, if you please. The truth, it hides in the spaces between their words. Lefebvre agreed, promising to summon the men to the inn that evening. As he departed, Poirot turned to Doctor Marsh. Madame, you will accompany me to the cave tomorrow. But tonight, I observe, the village, it has eyes and they are watching us. That afternoon, Poirot wandered Saint-Luz alone, his overcoat buttoned against the chill. He paused at the tavern, a low stone building where men gathered over glasses of red wine. The bartender, a stout woman with a sharp tongue, confirmed Père Antoine's tale. Vance and Sir Reginald had quarreled publicly the night before the explorer's death. Over that map, she said, wiping a glass. Vance called it a fraud. Sir Reginald laughed, said he'd prove him wrong. Poirot listened, his face impassive but his mind cataloguing every word. He visited the village church where a priest spoke of Michel Dufour's solitary habits and the market where a stallholder mentioned Jacques Brune's recent purchase of a heavy coat. Odd for a man used to hard labor. Each fragment, each whisper was a piece of the puzzle. As dusk fell, Poirot returned to the inn where a fire roared in the hearth. Dr. Marsh sat by the window sketching a map of the region. She looked up as he entered. "You've been busy, Monsieur Poirot." He smiled thinly. "The little gray cells, they do not rest. Tell me, Madame, this map of Sir Reginald's, what made it so valuable?" She hesitated, then spoke. "Its symbols. They're unlike anything in known Basque records. If authentic, it could rewrite our understanding of their culture. Sir Reginald believed it pointed to a hidden chamber in the cave, filled with artifacts untouched for centuries." "And you believed him?" Poirot asked. Her eyes met his. "I believe in evidence. He had the photograph, the passion. But passion blinds, Monsieur Poirot. It makes men careless." He nodded, his thoughts turning to the three suspects. Dufour, the guide, knew the cave's secrets. Vance, the rival, burned with ambition. Brune, the porter, was a shadow, his motives unclear. One of them, Poirot was certain, had seen the map not as history but as opportunity. That evening, Captain Lefebvre returned with news. The suspects would meet Poirot tomorrow after the cave inspection. As the inn grew quiet, Poirot sat by the fire, his tisane steaming in its cup. The mountains loomed outside, their peaks lost in darkness. Somewhere in their depths lay the truth, a truth Poirot would find, with order, method, and the relentless work of his little gray cells. Chapter 3. The Scene of the Crime. The morning air in Saint-Luz was crisp, the sky a pale expanse streaked with clouds that hinted at the snow Captain Lefebvre had warned of. Hercule Poirot, clad in a heavy overcoat and a felt hat tilted just so, stood at the edge of the village where a narrow path snaked upward into the Pyrenees. His polished shoes, ill-suited for the rocky terrain, gleamed defiantly against the dust. Beside him, Doctor. Evelyn Marsh adjusted her scarf, her breath visible in the chill. Captain Lefebvre led the way, his boots crunching on gravel, a lantern swinging from his hand, though the daylight was sufficient. The path to the Grotte des Ombres was steep, winding through gnarled pines and boulders worn smooth by centuries. Poirot moved with deliberate care, his small frame belying a surprising resilience. "The mountains, they are formidable," he remarked, his voice carrying a trace of admiration. "But they do not hide their secrets from Hercule Poirot." Lefebvre grunted, his face etched with the stoicism of a man accustomed to the region's harshness. "The cave is half an hour's climb, monsieur." Sir Reginald's team set up camp nearby, but the body was found inside. Dr. Marsh, trailing slightly, added, "He insisted on working alone in the cave that last day. Said he was close to a breakthrough." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Alone, madame? Yet with 3 companions so near? Curious, no?" She did not reply, her gaze fixed on the path. Poirot noted her silence, filing it away as he did every gesture, every pause. The human heart, he knew, revealed itself in such subtleties. The cave's entrance loomed at last, a jagged maw in the mountainside, fringed with moss and shadowed by overhanging rock. A gendarme stood guard, his rifle slung across his shoulder, his face ruddy from the cold. He saluted Lefebvre, who nodded and led Poirot and Doctor Marsh inside. The air grew heavy, damp with the scent of mineral and decay, and the temperature dropped sharply. Lefebvre's lantern cast flickering light on walls glistening with moisture, their surfaces etched with faint ancient markings. Spirals, lines, and Poirot noted with a quickening pulse a recurring crescent moon. The cave widened into a chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness, stalactites dripping like wax from a forgotten candelabrum. A chalk outline marked the spot where Sir Reginald Harrow's body had lain, near a flat stone that served as a natural table. On it rested a tin mug, its handle bent, its interior stained but oddly clean. Nearby, a canvas satchel lay open, its contents, notebooks, a trowel, a small hammer, scattered. As if in haste, Poirot crouched, his gloved hands hovering over the mug without touching it. "This," he said softly, "is most interesting. The mug, it is too clean, non? No dust, no residue, though it sits in a cave." He tilted his head, his eyes scanning the ground. "And no signs of struggle. Sir Reginald, he did not fight. He drank, perhaps, and then he fell." Lefebvre confirmed, his voice low. "The doctor found cyanide in his system. Quick, deadly. The mug was empty, but there was a spill on the stone. Traces of tea, the doctor said." "Tea?" Poirot's mustache twitched. "Sir Reginald, he was English, oui. A man of habit. He takes his tea even in a cave. But who prepares it? Who brings it?" He straightened, his gaze sweeping the chamber. "The map, Captain. Where was it kept?" Lefebvre pointed to the satchel. "He carried it there always. The others said he never let it out of his sight. When we found him, the satchel was open, the map gone. Poirot approached the satchel, his fingers deftly examining its contents without disturbing them. The notebooks were filled with sketches, maps, symbols, and notes in Sir Reginald's cramped hand. One page caught Poirot's eye, a detailed drawing of a crescent moon, identical to those on the cave walls, annotated with the words, "Key to the chamber." He closed the notebook, his expression unreadable. "Madame Marsh," he said, turning to the curator, "this map, it was parchment, you said. Fragile, yet it is taken and nothing else. Not the tools, not the notes. Why?" Her lips tightened. "It was unique. Priceless. Whoever took it knew its value." "Précisément," Poirot murmured. "And to know its value, one must know its secret. Tell me, madam, who else saw this photograph you mentioned?" She hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of her scarf. "Only the expedition team. Sir Reginald was careless, showing it at the museum at the inn." He trusted too easily. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Trust, he thought, was a dangerous luxury. He moved to the chalk outline, picturing Sir Reginald, a tall man by reputation, vigorous despite his years, now reduced to a silhouette on the cave floor. The poison suggested intimacy, someone close enough to share a mug to pour a fatal dose. The missing map pointed to motive, greed, rivalry, or perhaps something deeper. He stepped back, his eyes tracing the cave walls. The crescent moon symbols seemed to pulse in the lantern's glow, their curves both elegant and ominous. "Captain," he said, "you have searched this cave?" Lefebvre nodded. "Top to bottom, nothing but rocks and shadows. And yet," Poirot said almost to himself, "the shadows, they hide much. We shall return, but first I must meet these men. Dufour, Vance, Brun. Their words, they will tell me what the cave does not." As they left the chamber, Poirot paused at the entrance, glancing back. The cave seemed to watch him, its silence heavy with secrets. Outside, the wind had picked up, carrying the first flakes of snow. Dr. Marsh shivered, pulling her coat tighter, but Poirot stood motionless, his mind already assembling the fragments of the puzzle. Back at the inn, Captain Lefebvre arranged for the suspects to meet Poirot that afternoon. The detective retired to his room, a small but tidy space with a view of the snow-dusted peaks. He sat at a writing desk, spreading out his own notebook, its pages blank save for a single heading. The vanished map. With meticulous care, he listed the facts: the poison, the mug, the missing parchment, the crescent moon. Each was a clue, but none yet formed a picture. He thought of the three men. Michel Dufour, the guide, knew the mountain's secrets. Did he know the caves as well? Dr. Lionel Vance, the rival, burned with ambition, his quarrel with Sir Reginald a matter of public record. Jacques Brun, the porter, was a shadow, his strength a potential weapon, his motives obscure. One of them, Poirot was certain, had crossed the line from envy or greed to murder. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Dr. Marsh, her face pale. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, "Captain Lefebvre found something in the camp, a scrap of cloth caught on a thorn near the cave path. It's silk, blue like the scarf Vance wears." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Show me, madame." She produced a small evidence bag inside which lay a torn strip of blue silk, its edges frayed. Poirot examined it without touching, noting its fine weave. "Interesting," he said, "but a scarf. It is not a confession." "We must tread carefully, lest we accuse too soon." Dr. Marsh frowned. "You suspect Vance?" "I suspect everyone," Poirot replied, his voice soft but firm. "Until the little gray cells say otherwise." As she left, Poirot returned to his notebook, adding blue silk to his list. The cave had given him its first secrets, but the truth lay in the men who had walked its shadows. He closed the notebook, his mind alight with possibilities and prepared for the interviews ahead. The Grotte des Ombres, he thought, was not the only place where darkness hid the truth. Chapter 4. The Guide's Tale. The afternoon in Saint-Luz carried a bite, the air heavy with the promise of snow. Hercule Poirot sat in a private parlor of l'Auberge des Cimes, a small fire crackling in the grate to ward off the chill. The room was modest, its walls adorned with faded tapestries of mountain scenes, but Poirot had arranged it to his liking. A polished oak table, 2 chairs facing each other, and a steaming pot of tisane. Its herbal scent a small comfort against the rugged surroundings. He adjusted his tie, ensuring its knot was impeccable, and waited for the first of his interviews. Michel Dufour, the guide, was due any moment. Captain Lefebvre ushered the man in, then retreated, closing the door with a soft click. Dufour was lean and wiry, his face weathered, like the cliffs he navigated, with deep-set eyes that flickered with wariness. His clothes were practical, worn boots, a woolen jacket patched at the elbows, and a cap clutched in calloused hands. He stood for a moment, assessing Poirot as one might a treacherous path, before taking the offered seat. Monsieur Dufour, Poirot began, his voice smooth yet precise, you will permit me to ask questions, oui? The matter of Sir Reginald Harrow's death, it is most grave, and I seek only the truth. Dufour nodded, his expression guarded. Ask what you will, monsieur. I've nothing to hide. Poirot smiled thinly, his gray eyes sharp. Bon, let us begin with the expedition. You were hired by Sir Reginald as a guide. Tell me, how did this come to be? Dufour shifted, his fingers tightening on his cap. He came to Saint-Luz a month ago, asking for someone who knew the Grotte des Ombres. The innkeeper sent him to me. I've climbed these mountains since I was a boy. There's no path I don't know, no cave I can't find. And the Grotte des Ombres, Poirot said, leaning forward slightly. It is special, non? Père Antoine spoke of its legends, rituals, treasures. Did Sir Reginald share these tales with you? Dufour's jaw tightened. He talked of a map, said it would lead to something old, valuable. I didn't care for his stories. My job was to get him to the cave, keep him safe. Safe, Poirot repeated softly. Yet he is dead. Tell me, monsieur, what happened that last day? Dufour's eyes flicked to the fire, then back. We set up camp near the cave. Sir Reginald went inside alone, said he needed to study the walls. I went to the village for supplies, food, rope, lanterns. When I returned, he was dead. The others were at the camp. Said they hadn't gone in. Poirot's moustache twitched. You left him alone in the cave? This was his custom? Oui, Dufour said. He liked to work without us hovering. Said we'd disturb his focus. And the map? Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. You saw it, perhaps? A parchment marked with symbols? Dufour shook his head, but his fingers trembled slightly, betraying a flicker of unease. He kept it in his satchel. Never showed it to me. I'm a guide, not a scholar. Poirot leaned back, his hands clasped. Yet you knew of its value, monsieur. Sir Reginald, he was not discreet. He spoke of treasure, of glory. Such talk, it stirs the heart, no? Dufour's eyes hardened. I care for the mountains, not gold. I've seen men chase legends before. They end up lost or dead. Sir Reginald was no different. Poirot noted the man's defensiveness, the way his voice sharpened on the word gold. "Tell me," he said, "where were you when Sir Reginald drank his tea?" "The tea that carried the poison?" Dufour's face remained impassive, but a muscle twitched in his cheek. "In the village, like I said. I left at noon, returned by dusk. The others were at the camp when I got back. Ask them. Rest assured I shall," Poirot said, his smile polite but unyielding. "One last question, Monsieur Dufour. The cave, it has symbols, crescent moons etched in stone. You have seen them?" Dufour hesitated, then nodded. "Old markings. The Basques left them, or so the stories say. I don't know what they mean." Poirot observed him closely, noting the slight flush in his cheeks, the way his hands stilled as if to conceal their trembling. "Merci, monsieur," he said at last. "You have been most helpful. For now you may go." As Dufour stood, his cap twisted in his hands, Poirot added, "One does not navigate mountains without seeing much, no? The truth, it is like a path. It reveals itself to those who look closely." Dufour paused at the door, his back stiff, then left without a word. Poirot sipped his tisane, his mind cataloguing the interview. The guide's story was plausible yet incomplete. His unease, his quick dismissal of the map's allure suggested more than indifference. Did he know the cave's secrets better than he admitted? Or was his reticence merely the caution of a man accustomed to solitude? Poirot rose and crossed to the window where the village lay under a darkening sky. Snowflakes drifted down soft and silent, cloaking Saint-Luz in a hush that mirrored his thoughts. Dufour was but one piece of the puzzle. Two others remained, Vance with his ambition and Brune with his quiet strength. Each, Poirot knew, held a fragment of the truth. He returned to the table, opening his notebook to a fresh page. With his precise, elegant script, he wrote, "Michel Dufour knows the cave, claims ignorance of the map. Trembling hands, defensive tone, alibi, village unconfirmed." He paused, then added, "Crescent moon. Does he know its meaning?" The fire crackled, casting shadows on the tapestries. Poirot closed the notebook, his gray cells humming. The guide had spoken, but his words were like the mountain paths he claimed to master, winding, shadowed, and leading to places unseen. The next interviews, Poirot resolved, would bring him closer to the heart of the mystery. Chapter 5. The Rival's Ambition. The parlor of l'Auberge des Cimes was bathed in the soft glow of lamplight as the afternoon waned, the snow outside falling steadily now, blanketing Saint-Luz in a quiet shroud. Hercule Poirot sat at the oak table, his tisane replaced by a fresh pot, its steam curling like a question mark in the air. His notebook lay open, its pages filled with meticulous notes from his interview with Michel Dufour. The guide's guarded demeanor lingered in Poirot's mind, but now his attention turned to the next suspect. Doctor Lionel Vance, the rival archaeologist whose public quarrel with Sir Reginald Harrow had set tongues wagging in the village. Captain Lefebvre entered, escorting a man whose appearance was a study in contrasts to Dufour's rugged simplicity. Vance was tall, with the lean build of a scholar who spent more time with books than in the field. His dark hair was neatly combed, his tweed suit pressed, though the blue silk scarf at his throat bore a slight fray at one end. A detail Poirot's sharp eyes noted at once. Vance's face was handsome but severe, his mouth set in a line that suggested both confidence and impatience. He carried a leather-bound notebook under one arm as if it were a shield. "Monsieur Poirot," Vance said, his voice clipped with a Cambridge-educated drawl, "I trust this won't take long. I have work to do, real work, not chasing myths like Harrow." Poirot's smile was polite, his eyes unyielding. "Monsieur le Docteur, you will humor me, s'il vous plaît. The death of Sir Reginald, it is a matter most serious. Sit, and we shall discuss." Vance took the chair opposite, his movements precise but restless, as if he resented the confinement of the small parlor. He set his notebook on the table, its pages bristling with bookmarks. Poirot noted the gesture. Vance wanted to be seen as a man of intellect, not a suspect. "Let us begin," Poirot said, pouring a cup of tisane he did not intend to drink, the ritual a means to set his guest at ease. "You and Sir Reginald, you were rivals, yet you joined his expedition. Why?" Vance's lips curled slightly, not quite a sneer. "Professional courtesy, Monsieur Poirot. Harrow was a showman, not a scholar. He chased legends, basked treasures, lost chambers. I studied geology, stratigraphy, hard evidence. I joined to ensure his wild theories didn't tarnish the field." Poirot tilted his head, his mustache twitching. "You thought his map, this parchment, was a fraud?" "Undoubtedly," Vance said, leaning back. "Harrow waved that photograph about like a carnival barker, claiming it led to a hidden chamber. The symbols? Likely medieval forgeries, or worse, his own invention." "I told him as much. And this caused your quarrel?" Poirot asked, his tone deceptively mild. "The village speaks of a loud argument at the tavern the night before his death." Vance's eyes narrowed, but he did not flinch. "We argued, yes. Harrow mocked my work, called it dry. I told him his treasure hunt was a fool's errand. Words, Monsieur Poirot, not murder." "Words," Poirot echoed, "can cut deeply. Tell me, where were you when Sir Reginald died?" Vance's fingers tapped his notebook, a faint rhythm of unease. "In my tent, cataloging samples. The cave's geology interested me, not Harrow's fantasies. I was alone." "Alone," Poirot repeated, his voice soft but probing. "A convenient alibi, non? No one to confirm it. And the map, did you see it?" Vance's gaze flickered just for a moment. "Once, briefly. He showed it to the team, a tattered thing covered in nonsense symbols. A crescent moon, some lines. Worthless except to a dreamer like Hercule Poirot leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Vance's face. "Yet it is gone, this worthless map. And Sir Reginald, he is dead by poison. You are a man of science, Monsieur Vance. You know of cyanide, perhaps?" Vance's jaw tightened, his voice sharp. "I'm an archaeologist, not a chemist. If you're implying I poisoned him, you're as delusional as he was." Poirot raised a hand, placating. "I imply nothing, monsieur. I seek only the truth. Tell me, this scarf of yours—" He gestured to the blue silk, its frayed edge catching the light. "It is distinctive. A piece was found near the cave path. Can you explain this?" Vance's hand went to his scarf, his fingers brushing the tear. "I walk the paths daily, collecting samples. It must have caught on a thorn. This proves nothing." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his smile enigmatic. "But the smallest thread, it can unravel the largest lie. One final question. The crescent moon symbol, it appears in your notes, no? You study it?" Vance hesitated, then nodded. "It's a common motif in Basque archaeology. I've catalogued it, yes, but it's no key to treasure. Harrow was obsessed with it, saw meaning where there was none." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, Monsieur Vance. You may go." For now Vance rose, his notebook clutched tightly, and left with a curt nod. Poirot sat back, his fingers steepled, his mind dissecting the interview. Vance's arrogance was palpable, his disdain for Harrow clear. Yet there was something else. A flicker of unease when the scarf was mentioned, a pause when the crescent moon was raised. His alibi was weak, his ambition a motive. Had rivalry turned to murder? Poirot opened his notebook, adding to his list, Dr. Lionel Vance, rival, ambitious, quarreled with Harrow. Alibi, alone intent, unverified, blue scarf, crescent moon in notes, knowledge of symbols? He paused, then underlined scarf, recalling the silk fragment doctor. Marsh had shown him. It was a clue, but not yet proof. Outside, the snow thickened, cloaking the village in silence. Poirot rose and crossed to the window, his reflection faint against the darkening glass. Vance was a man of intellect, but intellect could mask cunning. The map, the poison, the cave, all pointed to a mind that planned, not merely reacted. Was Vance that mind? He returned to his seat, his thoughts turning to the next interview. Jacques Brun, the porter, remained, a man of few words by all accounts, but strength could hide secrets as surely as cunning. Poirot sipped his tisane, now cold, and smiled faintly. The puzzle was taking shape, and Hercule Poirot was never more content than when the pieces began to fit. Chapter 6. The Porter's Burden. The snow fell in earnest now, blanketing Saint-Luz in a hush that seemed to muffle even the thoughts of its inhabitants. Within the parlor of l'Auberge des Cimes, Hercule Poirot sat poised at the oak table, his notebook open, its pages a testament to his methodical mind. The fire in the great cast flickering shadows, lending the room an air of intimacy that belied the gravity of the task at hand. His interviews with Michel Dufour and Dr. Lionel Vance had revealed much. Guarded unease from the guide, calculated arrogance from the rival. But the puzzle remained incomplete. Now Poirot awaited Jacques Brun, the porter, the final piece of the expedition's trio. Captain Lefebvre entered, his boots leaving faint trails of melting snow on the floorboards. Behind him came Brun, a man whose presence filled the room like a boulder in a stream. He was broad-shouldered, his frame muscled from years of labor, yet his movements were slow, almost reluctant, as if he carried an unseen weight. His face was weathered, his eyes dark and steady, shadowed by a brow that seemed perpetually furrowed. His hands, large and calloused, hung at his sides, fingers flexing as if unsure of their purpose in this delicate setting. "Monsieur Brun," Poirot said, his voice warm yet precise, gesturing to the chair opposite. "You will sit, s'il vous plaît. Hercule Poirot seeks only to understand, and your words, they are most important." Brun lowered himself into the chair, its wooden frame creaking under his bulk. He wore a heavy wool coat, patched but clean, and his boots bore the mud of the mountains. He met Poirot's gaze with a quiet intensity, saying nothing, waiting. Poirot poured a cup of tisane, the gesture a ritual of civility, though he noted Brun's eyes flicker to the pot with a hint of suspicion. "You were the porter for Sir Reginald Harrow's expedition," Poirot began. "A man of strength, oui? Tell me, what was your role?" Brun's voice was low, almost a rumble. "I carried the gear, tents, tools, supplies, set up camp, fetched water, hauled whatever they needed. Sir Reginald paid well. I did my job." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of his notebook. "And Sir Reginald, he was a good employer. You liked him?" Brun's shoulders shifted, a faint shrug. "He was kind." Gave me extra when the loads were heavy, didn't talk much, not like the other one, Vance. Always barking orders, Poirot's mustache twitched at the mention of Vance. Dr. Vance, he was difficult, perhaps. You saw much working so closely with these men. Brune's eyes dropped to his hands, which rested on his knees. I saw what I was paid to see. Vance argued with Sir Reginald, called his map a fake. Dufour kept to himself, always off in the hills. I stayed at the camp, did my work, and the day Sir Reginald died? Poirot asked, his tone gentle but probing. Where were you, Monsieur Brune? Unloading supplies, Brune said, his voice steady. We'd got a delivery of food and fuel. I was at the camp, sorting it, when Dufour came back from the village. He said Sir Reginald was dead. Vance was in his tent reading or something. Poirot leaned forward, his gray eyes sharp. You did not go to the cave that day? Brune shook his head, his gaze unwavering. No need. Sir Reginald said he'd work alone. I stayed put. Poirot noted the simplicity of the answer, the lack of embellishment. Brune's story was straightforward, yet its very plainness intrigued him. Men of few words, he knew, could hide as much as those who spoke freely. The map, he said, this parchment Sir Reginald valued. You saw it, perhaps? Brune's eyes flicked up, then away toward the fire. Never. He kept it in his satchel. Didn't show it to me. I'm no scholar. Yet you heard of it, Poirot pressed, his voice soft as velvet. The village speaks of treasure, of a map leading to riches. Such talk, it reaches even the porter's ears, no? Brune's fingers tightened briefly, then relaxed. I heard talk. Sir Reginald was excited, said it was important. I didn't ask questions. My job was to carry, not to chase dreams. Poirot smiled faintly, his mind cataloguing the man's reticence. And the cave, Monsieur Brune? You know it well? I've been there, Brune admitted. Carried gear in and out. It's dark, cold. Old markings on the walls, but I don't know what they mean. The crescent moon, Poirot said, watching closely. You saw this symbol? Brune nodded, almost imperceptibly. On the walls, yeah. Sir Reginald pointed it out once, said it was part of his puzzle. I didn't care. Poirot's gaze lingered on Brune's face, searching for a crack in his stoic facade. The porter's answers were consistent, his demeanor calm, yet there was a stillness about him that suggested caution, as if he weighed each word before speaking. One last matter, Poirot said, his tone light but deliberate. The village market, they say you bought a heavy coat new, just before the expedition. Unusual for a man used to the mountains, no? Brune's brow furrowed, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. My old one was torn, needed something warmer, that's all bon, Poirot said, leaning back. You have been most cooperative, Monsieur Brune. You may go, but rest assured Hercule Poirot sees much, even in the shadows. Brune rose, his movement slow but deliberate, and left the parlor without a backward glance. Poirot sat in silence, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the table. Brune's simplicity was disarming, yet Poirot sensed a depth beneath it. The porter's strength made him capable of violence, but his motive remained elusive. Was he truly indifferent to the map's allure, or did his quiet demeanor conceal a deeper greed? Opening his notebook, Poirot wrote, Jacques Brune, porter, strong, reserved, alibi, at camp unverified. Claims ignorance of map, saw crescent moon, new coat. Why? He paused, then added, loyalty to coin or something more? The fire popped, sending a spark onto the hearth. Poirot glanced out the window where the snow now fell in thick curtains obscuring the mountains. Brune's story aligned, with Dufour's advances in its outline. Sir Reginald alone in the cave, the others at the camp. Yet each man's account carried a different weight, a different shadow. The porter's reticence, like Dufour's unease and Vance's arrogance, was a thread in the tapestry Poirot was weaving. He rose, crossing to the window to watch the snow settle on the village. The truth, he knew, was like the mountains themselves, hidden beneath layers, revealed only to those who climbed with care. Brune was the last of the trio, but the puzzle was far from solved. The map, the poison, the crescent moon, all pointed to a mind that planned with precision. Poirot's gray cells hummed, eager for the next revelation. Chapter 7. The clues assemble. The snow had transformed Saint-Loup into a world of white silence, the village's stone houses softened by drifts that piled against their walls. Inside l'Auberge des Cimes, Hercule Poirot sat alone in his room, a sanctuary of order amidst the mounting complexity of the case. The fire in the small hearth cast a warm glow across the desk where his notebook lay open, its pages filled with the precise script that mapped his thoughts. The interviews with Michel Dufour, Dr. Lionel Vance, and Jacques Brune had each added a piece to the puzzle, yet the picture remained tantalizingly incomplete. Poirot's gray cells, however, were alight, arranging facts with the meticulous care of a jeweler setting stones. He sipped a fresh tisane, its herbal warmth steadying his focus, and reviewed his notes. The facts were stark. Sir Reginald Harrow, poisoned by cyanide in the Grotte des Ombres, his precious map vanished from its satchel. The tin mug, suspiciously clean, suggested the poison had been in his tea, administered by someone close enough to share his trust. The crescent moon symbol, etched on the cave walls and noted in Sir Reginald's sketches, hinted at a deeper significance. The blue silk fragment, torn from a scarf like Vance's, pointed to a careless moment, or a deliberate clue. Each suspect, Dufour, Vance, Brune, had opportunity, but their motives danced just out of reach. Poirot leaned back, his fingers steepled, his eyes half closed as he summoned the scene in his mind. The cave, cold and shadowed, its walls whispering of ancient secrets. Sir Reginald alone, or so he thought, sipping tea as he studied his map. The poison, swift and silent, suggested a hand both bold and precise. The map's theft was no afterthought, it was the heart of the crime. But why? Greed for treasure? Rivalry? Or something more personal, a betrayal cloaked in scholarly pursuit? He rose and crossed to the window, where the snow fell in relentless curtains, obscuring the mountains beyond. The village was still, its inhabitants cocooned against the storm. Yet Poirot felt the pulse of the mystery quickening. He returned to the desk and opened Sir Reginald's satchel, delivered earlier by Captain Lefebvre at his request. The youth's gendarmerie had searched it, finding only tools and notebooks, but Poirot trusted his own method. Order and precision revealed what haste overlooked. He examined the satchel's contents with gloved hands, handling each item as if it were a relic of the crime itself. The trowel was worn, its handle marked with Sir Reginald's initials. The hammer was heavy, its head scratched from use. The notebooks, filled with sketches and annotations, chronicled the explorer's obsession with the cave. Poirot paused at a page he had noted before. The crescent moon drawn with care, its caption reading "Key to the Chamber." He turned the pages, seeking something new, and found it tucked within a fold, a scrap of parchment no larger than a playing card overlooked by the gendarmes. Its edges were frayed, its surface yellowed, but a single symbol stood out, a crescent moon inked in faded black. Poirot's pulse quickened, though his expression remained serene. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. A fragment of the map, perhaps, or a message left behind. He placed the scrap in a small envelope, sealing it with care. It was a clue, but whether it pointed to the killer or the map's fate, he could not yet say. He added to his notebook, parchment scrap, crescent moon, hidden in satchel, why left behind. The discovery sharpened his focus. The mug, the poison, the scarf, the symbol, all were threads in a tapestry of deceit. Dufour's trembling hand suggested fear or guilt, yet his knowledge of the cave made him indispensable. Vance's arrogance and weak alibi pointed to ambition, his scarf a damning link to the scene. Brune's reticence and strength made him a dark horse, his new coat a curious anomaly. Each man could have poured the fatal tea, each could have taken the map. But the why eluded him, and Poirot knew that motive was the key to unlocking the truth. He closed the notebook and stood pacing the small room with measured steps. The firelight danced on the walls, casting shadows that seemed to mimic the cave's ancient markings. He paused, his mind returning to the interviews. Dufour's claim of being in the village was unverified, his unease palpable. Vance's quarrel with Sir Reginald was public, his knowledge of the crescent moon suggestive. Brune's simplicity felt too deliberate, his purchase of a coat hinting at preparation for something beyond labor. Yet none had confessed, and their stories, while not identical, aligned in their broad strokes. Sir Reginald alone, the others at the camp. Poirot stopped, his eyes narrowing. "The camp," he said softly. "It is the stage they all share, yet none describe it fully. What happened there before the cave?" He resolved to visit the expedition's campsite, to see the ground where these men had worked and waited. But first he needed more voices, more eyes. He summoned Captain Lefebvre, who arrived promptly, his uniform dusted with snow. "Captain?" Poirot said. "I require the statements of any villagers who saw the expedition members on the day of the murder. The tavern, the market, the church. Someone watched them. And the camp. Arrange for me to visit it tomorrow after the snow eases." Lefebvre nodded, his face weary but compliant. "I'll gather what I can, Monsieur Poirot. The villagers talk, but they're cautious. Strangers stir suspicion here." "Bon," Poirot said. "Suspicion is a mirror. It reflects the truth, even if distorted. And one thing more. Ensure the satchel remains secure. Its contents, they are more valuable than they seem." As Lefebvre departed, Poirot returned to his desk, his mind a whirl of possibilities. The scrap of parchment was a breakthrough, but it raised questions. Had Sir Reginald hidden it deliberately, suspecting danger? Or had the killer left it, a taunt or a mistake? The crescent moon linked the cave, the map, and Vance's notes. Too many connections to be coincidence. Poirot felt the puzzle's edges forming, but its center remained blank. He gazed at the fire, its flames a reminder of the urgency driving him. The snow would delay his plans, but it would not stop him. The truth, like the mountains, was unyielding. But Hercule Poirot was a man who climbed with care, his little gray cells his surest guide. Tomorrow he would seek the villagers' whispers and the camp's secrets. For now he closed his eyes, letting the facts settle like the snow outside, knowing that clarity would come with the dawn. Chapter 8. The Village Gossip. The snow had relented by morning, leaving Saint-Loup cloaked in a crisp, glittering blanket that crunched underfoot. Hercule Poirot, wrapped in his overcoat and a scarf of impeccable wool, stepped out of l'Auberge des Cimes into the pale sunlight. The village stirred slowly, its inhabitants shoveling paths and exchanging muted greetings, their breaths puffing in the chill air. Poirot's polished shoes, now protected by practical galoshes, left precise prints as he made his way to the village café, a modest establishment where the locals gathered to trade news and warm their hands around steaming mugs. The café Le Repos du Mont was a low-ceilinged room smelling of coffee and freshly baked bread. Its windows were fogged with condensation, and a fire roared in a stone hearth. Poirot chose a table near the corner where he could observe without being conspicuous and ordered a tisane, declining the waitress's offer of croissant with a polite wave. His notebook rested in his pocket, but for now he preferred to listen, to let the village's pulse reveal itself through its whispers. Captain Lefebvre had promised to send villagers who might have seen the expedition members on the day of Sir Reginald Harrow's death. But Poirot, ever methodical, knew that truth often hid in unguarded moments. He sipped his tisane, its warmth a small comfort, and watched the room. A group of men, their faces weathered by mountain life, discussed the storm's aftermath. A young woman swept the floor, her eyes darting to Poirot with curiosity. And then an older woman entered, her shawl drawn tight, her gait slow but purposeful. She scanned the room, spotted Poirot, and approached, her expression a mix of caution and determination. "You are the detective, monsieur?" she asked, her voice low, tinged with the local dialect. "The one asking about the Englishman?" Poirot rose slightly, bowing. "Hercule Poirot, at your service, madame." "And you are?" "Madame Claire," she replied, settling into the chair opposite without invitation. Her eyes, sharp despite her age, studied him. "I keep the bakery. I see things, hear things. The captain said you wanted to know about the cave." The dead man Poirot's smile was encouraging, his gray eyes keen. "Précisément, Madame Claire. The smallest detail, it can illuminate the darkest mystery. Tell me, what did you see of Sir Reginald and his companions?" She leaned forward, her hands clasped on the table, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "That Englishman, Harrow, he was loud, full of big talk. Came to my shop for bread, always waving that photograph of his map, boasting about treasures. The night before he died, I saw him at the tavern arguing with the other one, the scholar with the fancy scarf. Dr. Vance," Poirot said, his tone neutral but his mind alert. "You heard their words?" "Enough," she said, her lips pursing. "Vance called him a charlatan, said his map was a lie. Harrow laughed, said he'd prove him wrong, that he'd find the chamber first. They were red in the face, both of them." The whole tavern heard Poirot nodded, filing this away. The public quarrel was no surprise, but its intensity suggested more than academic rivalry. "And the others? Michel Dufour, the guide? Jacques Brun, the porter?" Madame Claire's eyes narrowed. "Dufour, he's a shadow, that one. Always slipping through the village, never staying long. That day I saw him near the cave path at dusk, heading up the mountain. He said he was in the village all afternoon, but I know what I saw." Poirot's mustache twitched, his interest piqued. Dufour's alibi had been shaky, and now a witness placed him near the crime scene. "You are certain, madame?" "Dusk is a time of uncertain light. I know my village," she snapped, her tone firm. It was Dufour, carrying a sack, moving quick. He didn't see me. I was closing the shop in the doorway. "Bon," Poirot said, his voice soothing. "And Monsieur Brun?" She shrugged, her shawl slipping slightly. "Brun's a quiet one. Strong as an ox, but no talker. I saw him at the market that morning buying that new coat of his. Paid in cash more than he usually has. Looked nervous, kept looking over his shoulder." Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the table, a rhythm of thought. Brun's purchase, noted earlier, now carried a new weight. Cash and nerves. "You have a keen eye, Madame Claire. Did you hear anything else, perhaps of the map or the cave?" She hesitated, then leaned closer. "The map. Everyone knew about it. Harrow wouldn't shut up about it, said it was his legacy. Some say it's cursed, that the Grotte des Ombres takes what it wants. Old Père Antoine, he told Harrow to leave it be, but he wouldn't listen." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A curse, you say? The village believes this?" "Some do," she admitted, "so the cave's old, older than the church. My grandfather said it hides things. Secrets, not just treasure. Harrow stirred something up, and now he's dead." Poirot thanked her, slipping a coin across the table, which she pocketed with a nod. As she left, he opened his notebook, adding, "Madame Claire, saw Vance and Harrow argue, Dufour near cave at dusk, Brun nervous at market. Curse? Superstition or fear of truth?" He underlined Dufour at dusk, the discrepancy a crack in the guide's story. The cafe door opened again, admitting a young man, wiry and wind-burned, introduced by the waitress as Paul, a shepherd who supplied the expedition's camp. Poirot invited him to sit, noting his calloused hands and the faint smell of wool clinging to his jacket. "You worked with Sir Reginald's team, oui?" Poirot asked, his tone inviting confidence. Paul nodded, rubbing his hands together. "I brought cheese, milk, sometimes meat, delivered to their camp every few days. That last day I was there in the morning, saw them all, Harrow, Dufour, Vance, Brun." Poirot leaned forward, his eyes sharp. "And what did you see, Monsieur Paul?" "They were tense," Paul said. "Harrow was excited, kept talking about a breakthrough, some chamber in the cave. Vance was angry, muttering about wasting time. Dufour was packing gear, said he was going to the village. Brun was unloading crates, quiet as always." "You saw Dufour leave?" Poirot asked. "Aye," Paul said. "Midday, maybe. He took a mule, said he'd be back by evening. Vance stayed in his tent writing. Brun kept working, didn't say a word." Poirot's mind raced. Paul's account placed Dufour leaving the camp, consistent with his story, but Madame Claire's sighting at dusk suggested he returned earlier, or never left. "And Sir Reginald, where was he?" "In the cave," Paul said. "He went in early alone." "Said he didn't need anyone that day?" Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "You saw nothing unusual? No visitors, no arguments?" Paul hesitated, then shook his head. "Just the usual. They weren't friends, those three, always separate, like they didn't trust each other." Poirot thanked him, dismissing him gently, and added to his notes, "Paul, shepherd. Confirms camp tension. Dufour left midday. Vance intent. Brun working. No new clues, but distrust evident." He closed the notebook, his thoughts swirling. The village gossip had added depth to the puzzle. Vance's public clash, Dufour's questionable alibi, Brune's nervous wealth. The crescent moon scrap still in its envelope nagged at him. Had it been left deliberately or overlooked in haste? He rose, his galoshes squeaking as he stepped outside. The snow had stopped, leaving the village pristine, but the mountains loomed, their secrets unyielding. Poirot resolved to visit the camp next to see the ground where these men had lived and lied. The truth, he knew, was close, hidden in the spaces between their words, waiting for his little gray cells to bring it to light. Chapter 9. The Confrontation. The morning sun broke through the clouds, casting a pale, cold light over Saint-Luz, where the snow lay in crisp drifts, softening the village's rugged edges. Hercule Poirot stood at the window of his room in l'Auberge des Cimes, his overcoat draped over a chair, his tie knotted with precision. The events of the previous day, the village gossip, the whispers of Madame Claire and Paul the shepherd had sharpened the contours of the mystery. The crescent moon scrap tucked safely in his pocket was a tangible link to the vanished map. But it was the suspect's inconsistencies that fueled his resolve. Michel Dufour's dubious alibi doctor, Lionel Vance's frayed scarf, Jacques Brune's nervous purchase, each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit, and Poirot was determined to weave them together. He had requested Captain Lefebvre to assemble the three suspects, Dufour, Vance, and Brun, in the inn's parlor that evening for a confrontation. Not to accuse, not yet, but to observe, to press, to watch their faces as the truth drew near. Poirot's method relied on order, but also on the subtle art of provocation. The human heart, he murmured to himself, adjusting his cufflinks. It betrays itself under pressure. The day passed in preparation. Poirot visited the expedition's campsite, a short trek from the village, guided by Lefebvre. The camp was a cluster of weathered tents huddled against a rocky outcrop. The ground trampled but now dusted with snow. The air was sharp, scented with pine and the faint tang of ash from an extinguished fire. Poirot examined the site with care, noting the layout. Sir Reginald's tent, larger and set apart. Vance's neat and orderly. Dufour's Spartan, and Brune's cluttered with crates. A thorn bush near the path caught his eye, its branches free of any blue silk, suggesting the fragment found earlier had been torn elsewhere. He crouched by the fire pit, sifting through cold ashes, but found nothing beyond charred wood. "The camp," he said to Lefebvre. "It is a stage, but the drama was played in the cave." Back at the inn, Poirot reviewed his notes, adding, "Camp. Orderly, no new clues. Thornbush empty. Tents reflect men. Vance precise, Dufour minimal, Brune practical. The scrap of parchment, the crescent moon, the clean mug. These were the puzzle's edges, but the center remained elusive. He needed to shake the suspects to see who faltered. As evening fell, the parlor was prepared. The fire roared, casting a warm glow across the tapestries, and a long table was set with 4 chairs, 1 for Poirot, 3 for the suspects. Dr. Evelyn Marsh joined him, her presence requested as a witness and a scholar familiar with the map's significance. Captain Lefebvre stood by the door, his face impassive but his eyes alert. The suspects arrived together, their expressions a study in contrasts. Dufour's wariness, Vance's thinly veiled disdain, Brune's stoic silence. Poirot rose, his small frame commanding the room with quiet authority. "Messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "we are gathered to discuss the death of Sir Reginald Harrow, a man poisoned in the Grotte des Ombres, his map stolen. Hercule Poirot seeks the truth, and it lies among you. Sit, s'il vous plaît. The men obeyed. Dufour slouching slightly, Vance sitting rigidly, Brune filling his chair like a boulder. Dr. Marsh took a seat to Poirot's right, her notebook open, her pen poised. Poirot clasped his hands, his gray eyes sweeping over the trio. "Let us establish the facts," he said. "Sir Reginald was poisoned with cyanide, likely in his tea, poured from a mug found too clean for a cave. The map, a parchment of great value, was taken from his satchel. Each of you was near. Each had opportunity, but the motive, that is the key." Vance leaned forward, his voice sharp. "This is absurd, Poirot. You've no evidence, only village gossip and your own suspicions." Poirot's smile was serene but unyielding. "Evidence, Monsieur Vance, is like a mosaic. Small pieces form the whole. Let us consider he produced the envelope from his pocket, holding it up but not opening it. In Sir Reginald's satchel, overlooked by the gendarmes, I found this, a scrap of parchment bearing a crescent moon. The same symbol on the cave walls in his notes, and Monsieur Vance in yours." Vance paled, his fingers gripping the table. "I study symbols, as I told you." "That proves nothing, perhaps," Poirot said, his tone mild. "But there is more. A fragment of blue silk found near the cave path matches your scarf, monsieur. A careless moment, non?" Vance's hand went to his scarf, his voice rising. "I walk those paths daily. A thorn could have caught it. You're grasping at straws." Dufour shifted, his eyes darting to Vance. "He's right. The mountains tear at everything. Doesn't mean he's a killer." Poirot turned to the guide, his gaze piercing. "And you, Monsieur Dufour? You claim you were in the village all afternoon, yet Madame Claire saw you near the cave at dusk carrying a sack. What was in it, I wonder?" Dufour's face hardened, his hands clenching. "She's mistaken. I was fetching supplies, food, rope. I wasn't near the cave till I found him dead." Brune, silent until now, spoke, his voice a low rumble. "I saw Dufour leave the camp at noon. He didn't come back till evening." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Merci, Monsieur Brun. Your loyalty to your comrade is noted. But your own actions intrigue me. A new coat, purchased with cash, you rarely have. A nervous manner at the market. What were you preparing for?" Brune's gaze dropped to his hands. "My old coat was ruined. I needed a new one." "Nothing more," Dr. Marsh interjected, her voice sharp. "Monsieur Poirot, these men worked for Sir Reginald." They knew the map's value. Any of them could have seen their chance. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Précisément, madame. The map was the prize, but the poison was the method. Someone poured Sir Reginald's tea, someone he trusted, someone who knew his habits." He paused, letting the words hang. "The crescent moon, it is no mere symbol. It is the thread that binds you all. Monsieur Vance, you study it. Monsieur Dufour, you know the cave's markings. Monsieur Brune, you saw it, yet claim ignorance." The room grew tense, the fire's crackle the only sound. Vance's jaw tightened, Dufour's eyes flickered, Brune stared at the floor. Poirot continued, his voice soft but relentless. "The truth, messieurs, is close. I see it in your faces. The fear, the defiance, the silence. One of you knows more than he says." Vance stood abruptly, his chair scraping. "This is a farce. You accuse us all, yet prove nothing. I'll not sit here and be slandered." "Sit, monsieur," Poirot said, his tone suddenly sharp. "You will leave when Hercule Poirot permits it." Vance hesitated, then sat, his face flushed. Dufour and Brune exchanged glances, their unease palpable. Poirot leaned back, satisfied. The confrontation had stirred them, revealing cracks in their facades. He dismissed them, instructing Lefebvre to keep them under watch. As they left, Doctor, Marsh turned to him, her eyes wide. "You believe one of them did it," she said, not a question. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I believe, madame, that the truth is like the snow outside. It covers much, but it cannot hide forever. Tomorrow we shall see more clearly." He retired to his room, his notebook heavier with observations. Confrontation, Vance defensive, Scarf a sore point. Dufour's alibi cracks, Brune protective, but why? Crescent moon binds them. The puzzle was tightening, and Poirot felt the thrill of the chase. The killer was among them, and his little gray cells were closing in. Chapter 10. The Trap. The night had draped Saint-Luz in a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional creak of settling snow on the rooftops. Hercule Poirot sat by the fire in his room at l'Auberge des Cimes, his notebook open, the flickering light casting shadows across its pages. The confrontation in the parlor had stirred the suspects. Michel Dufour's faltering alibi doctor. Lionel Vance's defensive bluster. Jacques Brune's protective silence, each reaction a clue, each pause a revelation. Yet the truth remained just beyond reach, like a shadow in the Grotte des Ombres. Poirot's gray cells, however, were relentless, and he knew that to catch a killer one must sometimes set a trap. The crescent moon scrap, safely tucked in its envelope, was the key. Its presence in Sir Reginald Harrow's satchel suggested either a mistake by the thief or a deliberate act by the victim. The map's theft, the poison, the clean mug, all pointed to a calculated mind. But calculation could be undone by pressure. Poirot resolved to force the killer's hand, to draw him into the open with a bait too tempting to resist. He summoned Captain Lefebvre, who arrived promptly, his face etched with the weariness of a man navigating both storm and suspicion. "Captain," Poirot said, his voice low but firm, "we must act tonight. The killer, he is among our 3 suspects, and he grows restless. I have a plan, a ruse to flush him out." Lefebvre's brow furrowed. "A ruse, Monsieur Poirot? The snow makes movement difficult, and my men are stretched thin." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The snow, it is our ally. It hides our steps, but it will betray his." Listen carefully. He outlined his plan. He would announce through Dr. Marsh that a second fragment of the map had been found in the cave, to be revealed tomorrow morning. The news would be shared with the suspects, subtly but deliberately, to spark a reaction. Poirot and Lefebvre would then watch the cave that night, hidden, to see who came searching. Lefebvre hesitated, then nodded. "It's risky, but I trust your judgment. I'll arrange for a man to guard the inn, keep the suspects in sight until they move." "Bon," Poirot said, "and tell Dr. Marsh to speak of this discovery at dinner, where all 3 will hear. She must be convincing, but not too eager. The killer, he will not resist." The plan set, Poirot prepared for the evening. He dressed warmly, his overcoat and scarf supplemented by a borrowed woolen hat, though he adjusted it with distaste to preserve his dignity. At dinner he sat apart, observing his doctor. Marsh played her part. She spoke loudly enough for the suspects, seated at a nearby table, to overhear, her voice tinged with excitement. "Monsieur Poirot, the gendarmes found something extraordinary today. A second piece of the map hidden in the cave. It's being examined tomorrow, but it could lead us to the chamber." Vance's fork paused mid-air, his eyes narrowing. Dufour's hand tightened on his glass, his gaze flickering to the door. Brune, as ever, remained impassive, but his shoulders stiffened slightly. Poirot, sipping his tisane, noted each reaction, his heart quickening. The bait was taken. As night fell, Poirot and Lefebvre trekked to the Grotte des Ombres, their lanterns dimmed to avoid detection. The snow had ceased, leaving a crystalline stillness, the moon casting a faint glow on the path. They took a concealed position behind a rocky outcrop near the cave's entrance, their breaths visible in the frigid air. Poirot, though unaccustomed to such physical discomfort, bore it with stoic resolve, his mind fixed on the trap. Hours passed, the cold seeping through their layers, but Poirot's focus never wavered. At midnight, a sound broke the silence, soft footsteps crunching in the snow. A figure emerged, cloaked in a dark coat, a torch beam cutting through the darkness. Poirot's eyes narrowed as the figure approached the cave, moving with purpose. The torchlight caught a flash of blue silk at the throat. Vance. Lefebvre tensed, but Poirot raised a hand, signaling patience. Vance entered the cave, his torch sweeping the walls, pausing at the stone table where Sir Reginald had died. He crouched, searching frantically, his hands scrabbling at the ground, the stalactites, the crevices. Poirot whispered to Lefebvre, "He seeks the fragment. He knows it could betray him." They moved silently, closing in. As Vance stood empty-handed and muttering, Lefebvre stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Dr. Vance, enough. Step out, hands where I can see them." Vance froze, his torch dropping to the snow. His face, caught in Lefebvre's lantern light, was a mask of fury and fear. "This is madness," he spat. "I was only searching for what you thought was lost," Poirot interrupted, emerging from the shadows, his voice calm but cutting. "You sought to destroy evidence, Monsieur Vance. The map you stole, it haunts you, non?" Vance's defiance crumbled, his shoulders sagging. I needed to be sure," he stammered. "Harrow was a fool, but I didn't." "Enough," Poirot said, his tone final. "You will come with us." The cave, it has told its tale back at the inn, in the parlor now lit by harsh lamplight. Vance sat, his hands trembling. Poirot stood before him, Lefebvre at his side. "Doctor." Marsh watching from a corner. "Monsieur Vance," Poirot said, "and you went to the cave tonight because you feared a second fragment would reveal your guilt. The blue silk, your notes on the crescent moon, your weak alibi. These were clues, but your actions tonight, they are proof." Vance's voice broke. "I wanted the treasure," he confessed, his head bowing. "Harrow mocked me, said I'd never find it. I knew his habits, tea every afternoon alone in the cave. I slipped cyanide into his mug, took the map from his satchel. It was so easy." Poirot's eyes were cold. "Easy, monsieur. To kill a man for ambition? Where's the map now?" "In my tent," Vance whispered, "hidden in an oilcloth under my cot." Lefebvre dispatched a gendarme to retrieve it, and Poirot turned to Doctor Marsh. "Madame, you will verify the map when it arrives." The truth, it is complete. Vance's confession hung in the air, a weight lifted yet heavy with consequence. Poirot felt no triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of order restored. The trap had worked, the killer caught, but the map's secrets remained, waiting to be unveiled. Chapter 11. The Confession. The parlor of l'Auberge des Cimes was a stark contrast to the snowy night outside, its fire casting a warm but unforgiving light across the faces gathered within. Hercule Poirot stood at the center of the room, his small frame radiating authority, his gray eyes fixed on Dr. Lionel Vance, who sat slumped in a chair, his earlier arrogance replaced by a pallor of defeat. Captain Lefebvre stood by the door, his presence a silent promise of justice, while Dr. Evelyn Marsh sat at the table, her notebook open but untouched, her expression a mix of shock and vindication. The air was heavy with the weight of Vance's confession, the words still echoing. I slipped cyanide into his mug, took the map. Poirot's voice when he spoke was calm but relentless, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Monsieur Vance," he said, "you have admitted to the murder of Sir Reginald Harrow, a crime of calculation and betrayal. But Hercule Poirot requires the full truth. Tell us precisely how you committed this act and why." Vance's hands trembled, his blue silk scarf, its frayed edge now a damning clue, hanging loosely at his throat. He looked up, his eyes darting between Poirot and Lefebvre, seeking escape but finding none. "It wasn't meant to go so far," he began, his voice hoarse. "Harrow was insufferable. He mocked my work, called it pedestrian. He waved that map in my face, boasting of a chamber that would make him a legend. I couldn't let him win." Poirot's mustache twitched, his gaze unyielding. "And so you turned to poison. Cyanide, monsieur, a choice both swift and cruel. How did you obtain it?" Vance swallowed, his fingers twisting together. "I've studied in laboratories, worked with chemicals for dating artifacts. Cyanide is not hard to come by if you know where to look. I kept a small vial for experiments. It was easy to bring it along hidden in my kit." Dr. Marsh gasped softly, her pen finally moving as she scribbled notes. Poirot nodded, encouraging Vance to continue. "And the method? You knew Sir Reginald's habits, nah?" "Yes," Vance admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "He drank tea every afternoon, always alone in the cave, said it helped him think. I watched him for days, saw how he left his mug on that stone table. That last day I offered to fetch water from the camp's supply. I poured the tea, added the cyanide, just a pinch, enough to kill quickly. He didn't suspect. He thanked me." Even Poirot's eyes narrowed, a flicker of disgust beneath his calm exterior. "And the map? You took it from his satchel?" Vance nodded, his head bowing. "After he collapsed, I waited a moment, made sure he was gone. The satchel was open, the map inside. I took it, wrapped it in oilcloth, and hid it in my tent. I thought I could decipher. It later claimed the discovery as my own, the crescent moon," Poirot said, producing the parchment scrap from his pocket and holding it up. "This was left behind. A mistake? Or did you intend to mislead?" Vance's eyes widened, his breath catching. "I didn't know it was there. I thought I'd taken the whole map. He must have torn it, hidden that piece." Poirot's smile was faint, almost pitying. "Sir Reginald, he was not so careless as you thought. He suspected danger, perhaps, and left a clue for those who would follow. But you, Monsieur Vance, you were careless. The silk from your scarf, torn on a thorn, betrayed your presence near the cave." Vance's hand went to his scarf, his fingers tracing the frayed edge. "I didn't notice," he murmured. "I was in a hurry, checking the path, making sure no one saw me." Captain Lefebvre stepped forward, his voice gruff. "The map, Doctor." "Vance, it's in your tent, you said. My men are retrieving it now. If it's not there, you'll answer for it." "It's there," Vance said quickly. "Under the cot, in a tin box. I swear it." Poirot turned to Dr. Marsh. "Madame, when the map is recovered, you will examine it." Its authenticity, its secrets, they must be preserved for the truth, not for glory. She nodded, her face pale but resolute. I'll ensure it's studied properly, Monsieur Poirot. For the museum, not for personal gain. The door opened and a gendarme entered carrying a small tin box. He placed it on the table and Lefebvre opened it, revealing a folded oilcloth. Inside was the map, a fragile parchment, its edges brittle, covered in cryptic symbols. Lines, spirals, and at its center a prominent crescent moon. Dr. Marsh inhaled sharply, her fingers hovering over it without touching. "It's real," she whispered. "The symbols match the cave's markings." This could lead to the chamber. Poirot's gaze remained on Vance. "You killed for this, monsieur, yet you did not understand its true value. Not treasure, but knowledge. A legacy you sought to steal." Vance's head dropped into his hands, his voice breaking. "I wanted to be remembered, to outshine him. He was always one step ahead, always the hero. I couldn't stand it." Poirot turned to Lefebvre. "Captain, you will take Monsieur Vance into custody." "The law, it will judge him as it must," Lefebvre nodded, signaling the gendarme to escort Vance out. As the archaeologist was led away, his shoulders hunched, Poirot addressed Dufour and Brun, who had been summoned to witness the confession. "Monsieur," he said, "you are cleared of this crime, but not of suspicion. Monsieur Dufour, your presence near the cave at dusk was a misunderstanding, explained by your return from the village. Monsieur Brun, your new coat was no more than a necessity, though your silence, it did not serve you well." Dufour's face relaxed, though his eyes remained wary. Brun merely nodded, his expression unchanged. Poirot dismissed them and they left without a word, their footsteps heavy on the floorboards. Dr. Marsh rose, clutching the tin box. "Monsieur Poirot, this map, it's a triumph, despite the tragedy. The museum will honor Sir Reginald's work." Poirot's smile was tinged with melancholy. "A triumph, oui, but at what cost? The human heart, madame, it is a labyrinth, and greed is its darkest path." As the parlor emptied, Poirot stood alone, his thoughts turning to the cave, the crescent moon, the man who died chasing a dream. The puzzle was solved, the killer caught, but the weight of the truth lingered as heavy as the snow outside. Chapter 12. The Return. The morning sun rose over Saint-Loup, its light piercing the thinning clouds and casting a golden sheen across the snow-draped village. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold of l'Auberge des Cimes, his valise packed, his overcoat buttoned against the lingering chill. The case of the vanished map was solved, the murderer, Doctor. Lionel Vance, now in the custody of Captain Lefebvre, the priceless parchment recovered and entrusted to Doctor. Evelyn Marsh for the British Museum. Yet Poirot felt no triumph, only the quiet satisfaction of order restored, tempered by the melancholy of a life lost to ambition and greed. Dr. Marsh approached, her tweed coat dusted with snow, her face softened by gratitude. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but warm, "your work here has been extraordinary. The map will be studied, not sold, and Sir Reginald's legacy will endure in scholarship, not scandal." Poirot inclined his head, his mustache curving slightly. "Madame, it is the duty of Hercule Poirot to bring light to darkness. The map, it is a treasure of knowledge, and you will guard it well, I trust." She nodded, clutching the tin box containing the parchment. "It will be catalogued and preserved. The crescent moon symbols, the chamber, they'll be explored with care, not haste. Sir Reginald would have wanted that Oui, Poirot said softly, his eyes drifting to the mountains, their peaks sharp against the sky. But he wanted too much, and it cost him everything. The human heart, it is a labyrinth, and its paths are perilous. Dr. Marsh hesitated, then offered her hand. Safe travels, Monsieur Poirot. If ever the museum has need of you again, we know where to find you. He took her hand, his grip firm but gentle. And I, madame, am never far from a mystery. Adieu. Captain Lefebvre joined them, his face weary but relieved. The train to Paris leaves in an hour, Monsieur Poirot. My men will escort you to the station. Vance is secure and the village is quiet again. Bon, Poirot said, adjusting his hat. You have been most efficient, Captain. The law, it will take its course, and justice it is served. As Lefebvre led the way to a waiting carriage, Poirot paused to glance back at Saint-Luz. The village, nestled in its valley, seemed at peace, its secrets buried once more beneath the snow. Yet he knew that secrets like the mountains endured. Michel Dufour, cleared of murder but shadowed by his solitary ways, would return to his paths. Jacques Brun, his silence no longer suspect, would carry on with his labor. The Grotte des Ombres would keep its mysteries, its crescent moons etched in stone, waiting for another to chase its truths. The carriage rattled toward the station, the horses' hooves muffled by the snow. Poirot settled back, his valise at his side, and opened his notebook one final time. He wrote, "Case concluded. Vance, driven by rivalry, poisoned Harrow, stole map. Parchment recovered, truth revealed. The crescent moon, a symbol of dreams and betrayal." He closed the notebook, his fingers tracing its leather cover, and allowed himself a small sigh. At the station, the train steamed gently, its whistle a promise of departure. Poirot boarded, finding a first-class compartment where he could sit in solitude. As the train pulled away, the Pyrenees receded, their jagged peaks fading into mist. He poured a tisane from a flask he had brought, savoring its warmth, and reflected on the case. The map had been the lure, but it was the human heart, Vance's ambition, Harrow's recklessness, that had woven the tragedy. "The little gray cells," he murmured, his eyes half closed. "They see what others miss. Order and method, they conquer all." As the train carried him toward Paris, and from there to London, Poirot felt the weight of the mystery lift, replaced by the quiet anticipation of his next challenge. The world was full of puzzles, and Hercule Poirot was ever ready to solve them.